Well, welcome to Complete Car, and this is the new Skoda Elroq. I suppose it's worth pointing out that, car companies tend to bring us hard-bitten reviewers to relatively nice, sunny places to review their cars because they want us to feel all kind of warm and fuzzy about them, but it hasn't really worked out today because we're here in Mallorca and it's lashing down. It is actually currently raining. It's just raining slightly less than it was earlier, so I took this opportunity to stop and film this piece. But the Elroq is a very important car for Skoda because it'll hit the Irish market at a starting price of just over €36,000. And that kind of puts it pretty much par on par with the medium-sized Skoda Karoq SUV. Although the Elroq looks more like the smaller Kamiq in its kind of style, I mean, you can see from the fact that I'm standing next to it right now, it is actually quite a chunky car. It is quite large. It just doesn't look big at first when you see it. It's only when you get up close that you really start to notice it. That €36,000 gets you this version, which is the 170 horsepower rear-wheel drive version. Rear-wheel drive, of course, because this sits on the same basic MEB package as the bigger Enyaq. And the Enyaq is really, really successful for Skoda. I know we talk about electric car sales falling all the time, but actually the Enyaq's been going really well. It's the fourth best-selling EV across Europe right now. And this, the Elroq, is already going well, even though it hasn't actually gone on sale yet. Well, I mean, it kind of has gone on sale. You can order it. We do know the prices, but you won't get deliveries until next April, May at the earliest. Even so, 25,000 people across Europe have already put down a deposit for this car. That is very, very impressive performance. But there's slightly less impressive performance in the sense of range, because this basic version gets a 52 kilowatt usable battery capacity, which is quite small, and so consequently you get a range of under 400 kilometers. The official range is about 376 kilometers, but certainly in today's rather chilly and damp conditions with the heating turned on, it's fallen to about 300 kilometers, maybe 290 for your ultimate usable range, and that isn't necessarily very good, particularly when you think that this is going to be priced against cars like the new Kia EV3, which can go a good bit further on a single charge. Nonetheless, I do think this is a better car than the EV3 in some specific areas, and we'll go and look at those more fully now, because particularly where I think this Elroq is better is on the inside. But before we check out the bits that you actually sit on, I think we should go and look at the bits that you put stuff in, because the boot on this is really quite impressive. So basically the Elroq has a boot capacity of 470 litres, which is pretty good for this size of car. Again, slightly bigger than the Kia EV3. I didn't want to turn this into a twin test with the EV3, incidentally, because we don't, as you can see, we don't have an EV3 here. But it is this car's biggest competitor, so it will come up a few times. This one gets a power boot. That is an option. Now, typical Skoda. Low load lip. Loads, nice square space. Look, drawers here for putting smaller items in. Little flick out bag hooks here, and you get this interesting kind of hammock thing for putting delicate items. I mean, you could put your eggs in that, I suppose, and they wouldn't get smashed. Now, there's not really any underfloor storage. There's a tiny little space here you can squeeze a few bits and pieces into. But where Skoda has boxed really clever is here, because that's where the charging cable gets stored. There's no frunk in the nose, so you can't throw the charging cable up there, but you can put it here underneath the parcel shelf. And incidentally, the parcel shelf is fully adjustable. If I just undo that, and I'd better undo that as well, because otherwise bits are going to get in the way. But you can, theoretically anyway, it should work. There we go. Pop that off there, and it'll actually sit down here at a second level, so you can get a nice split level boot going on. So really versatile, really useful. The seats obviously do fold, and they fold reasonably flat, not totally so, but you do get a nice long load floor in there. So this is, in typical Skoda style, a really, really practical car. But aside from the practicality, what's it actually like inside? I think here in the interior, Skoda has done an absolutely phenomenal job. I don't say that lightly. I think this is a really genuinely stunning vehicular interior. The quality levels are off the scale good. I think this is actually better than anything Volkswagen or Audi is doing right now, to be honest. And maybe that's part of the reason why Volkswagen and Audi are in such financial difficulties, because they're not making cars that are as good as what Skoda are doing. Fuel for thought, I guess. You get this lovely soft fabric. It's made from recycled ocean plastics, including old fishing nets. That goes on the dashboard and the doors. And even though it's a recycled material, it's really warm and soft and kind of welcoming. And on a chilly, wet day like today, it feels so good to sit into a cabin like this. Too many car cabins you sit in and they're just all kind of hard surfaces and they feel cold as you get in, and this doesn't. Even before you've turned the heating on, even before you've turned on the heated seat and the heated steering wheel, both lovely things to have, incidentally, it feels warm and inviting, and I think that's a really good trick to pull off. You'll notice on the nose of the car and here on the steering wheel, we now get Skoda spelt out in letters instead of the old Arrowhead logo. And I have to say, I do miss the old Arrowhead logo. You can blame the Chinese market for that. The Chinese market demands that you have the actual name of the car picked out as a word rather than an abstract emblem. And that's a bit of a pity. But again, you've got really good quality plastics here on top of the doors. I mean, a tiny bit of cheapness down here by the mirror switches and the window switches, but not that bad at all, really. Typical Skoda, plenty of storage. There's loads of space down here underneath the central spar of the center console here. Two good sized cup holders here with the little knobbly bits so that you can have a bottle of fizzy drink here and just crank open the top of it with one hand. You've got wireless phone chargers here. You've got storage here. You've got more storage here under the armrest. The glove box is actually quite good. It's not bad. Good door bins too. They could be a little bit wider, but they're fine. Really, really practical, well thought out. And of course, being a Skoda, you've got the umbrella in the driver's door as well, which is, on a day like today, really, really helpful. Now, this one gets the big 13-inch touchscreen. And I do have to say, it's definitely better to use than it has been in the past. The controls are slicker. You can set things up the way you want in terms of you can have customized shortcut buttons up here on top and down here at the bottom, and that is good. It's still a bit fiddly, but more than anything else, I just think it's too big. I mean, for a car of this size, I just think, knock about 3 inches off that and you've still got a very usable screen that kind of, it doesn't actually block your visibility out of the windscreen, but every time I kind of glance over at it, I feel like it's going to. You know what I mean? It's just a slightly strange effect. And I just think we're getting too obsessed with screen size when actually what we should be looking at is functionality and usability. You do get nice instruments here under a little cowl. It's actually basically the same instruments that you get in the Enyaq and in most of the Volkswagen ID models. Neat and effective. Not the best necessarily, but fine. This one does come with the optional augmented reality heads-up display. That is really, really good, particularly when you're using sat-nav on unfamiliar roads, such as around here. You actually get floating arrows in front of your eyes that point you the right direction up the road you need to go. And for me, with my famously poor sense of direction, that's pretty good. Two-spoke steering wheel is standard, of course, as it is on most Skodas now. Some nice tactile proper buttons, not touch-sensitive pads. Please, other car manufacturers, pay attention to that. These are so much easier and nicer to use. You come back. Oh, I should mention there's some shortcut buttons for the screen down here as well. So you get your driving assist, driving mode, parking aid. This does have full automated parking as an option. And not only that, you can actually, if you use the Skoda app and pair it to the car, you can get out of the car and park the car remotely from the outside. And that's not just shuffling back and forth either. That can be a full swing-in reverse park maneuver that you can do from outside the car. I mean, it'll be a brave person who tries it in the supermarket car park this Christmas. Think of all the horn honking that'll go on behind you while you're doing that, but you can do it. As I say, though, the thing that really gets you about this is just the sheer quality and tactility and pleasantness and invitingness of it all. This is such a good interior, and I think that certainly starts to make up for the truncated range of this basic small battery model. It's also, of course, worth remembering there are in fact two other battery versions of the Elroq. So there's a 60 kilowatt one which will take you for about 450 kilometers on a full charge, and then there's a big battery 77 kilowatt version which will do a claimed 580 kilometers on a charge, although of course those are quite a bit more expensive than this one. Actually the 60 version doesn't arrive until later next year, which is I think a bit of a shame, and I think that's probably going to be the one you should go for, although actually Skoda Ireland have been saying that so far most of the deposits they're taking and most of the customer interest has been in the big battery 580k one. It seems we still don't trust, probably quite rightly, the charging network in Ireland, so we want to have that big battery, that leeway in range that just makes life a little bit easier. But enough talk about batteries. What's this Elroq like in the back? This is a family SUV crossover after all, so can it handle life in the back seats for your kids and other relatives? Let's find out. Once again, in the back of the Elroq, Skoda is playing an absolute blinder. I mean, look how much knee room I've got. Look how much headroom I've got. That is my driving position right there. This is such a comfortable back seat. It's really, really good. And again, loads and loads of storage and space. So you've got split level seat back pockets here, so there's a smaller pocket here for your phone or your earbuds or whatever. There's good door bins, there's more space down here. This one has heated seats and rear air conditioning controls, and 2 USB-C slots as well. And if I pull down the armrest, you get a proper armrest because the cup holders fold away, so there's no dropping your elbow into it. That's really nice as well. It's super back here, I have to say. I mean, you would not mind spending a long journey in the back of this car at all. And this being an up-spec one, look, you get nice little sunshades as well. It's just really, really well set up. And I have to say, again, I don't want to be labouring the Kia EV3 point, but it's definitely nicer here in the back than it is in the back of the EV3. In the EV3, you feel a bit more perched up and sitting up in the roof lining. In this, you feel actually quite laid back and really, really comfortable. Now, the middle seat is a little bit narrow, and obviously with this storage area down here, there's nowhere to put my feet. But I can just about fit. Again, I've still got enough headroom. Wouldn't want to be sitting here in the middle for very long, but it's not too shabby. And there are ISOFIX points as well, here and here in the outer 2 rear seats, and a third set of ISOFIX points in the front passenger seat with a switchable airbag, of course. So this is really, really practical with that boot, with this comfort, with this space, with this good visibility out of the side windows. This is really, really well set up for electric family life. But what's the Elroq like to drive? I think it's about time we went and found out, don't you? Initially, when you get in the Elroq and start rolling, it does feel very, very smooth, like most other cars based on that MEB electric car platform that Volkswagen uses across so many of its various brands and models. Kind of sort of liquid smoothness. The power delivery is very, very smooth. Now, the power delivery, I have to say, is very, very smooth in part because it's not a very quick car, this. I mean, it's fine. It feels, you know, with 310 Newton meters of torque, it feels reasonably punchy from low speeds, but you know, when you're trying to accelerate at motorway speeds, it's quite weak, I'm afraid. It's not the best. Now, you can get more power with the bigger battery versions, and I'm going to suggest that that's probably not a bad idea. That said, for most people, and you know, considering most of us only do relatively short journeys and most of us do our driving around town or urban areas, it's absolutely fine. That does the job quite nicely. But also the smoothness. I mean, this particular stretch of road that we're on now is incredibly well surfaced. Really, really good. Makes most of our roads at home look like absolute crap. But we have had some bumpy surfaces earlier in this test drive, and on the optional 20-inch alloy wheels, really, oh, you see, there's a bump there. The Elroq really is just too fidgety. I think you definitely need to go for the smallest wheels you can possibly get on it. Because it just, and I have to say that's unusual for an MEB platform car. I mean, you know, cars like the Volkswagen ID3, the Cupra Born, the Enyaq, the ID4, the ID7, they tend to be really, really smooth riding cars. And whether it's just the kind of the overall smaller shape of the Elroq, maybe a shorter wheelbase, it just doesn't feel entirely settled. And again, you know, these are the big option wheels. You can go up to 21s actually, which I really don't think would be a very good idea on this basis at any rate. It would feel far too jittery and fidgety, I think. And as it is, I just think, yeah, it's just not quite comfortable enough, and it feels all at odds with that early initial smoothness and that lovely liquid feel. That said, refinement is very, very good. There's very little tyre noise, hardly any wind noise. It is a very, very soothing car in which to drive as long as the road surface is at least reasonably good. In terms of steering, it's actually quite nice. It feels well balanced, this car. Now, if you press on really hard, then the weight even of this, the smallest battery in the lineup, will start to overwhelm the suspension a bit, and it just does get a bit unruly and a bit unhappy about being pushed too hard. And there are some very twisty, tight mountain roads we've been on this morning. But actually, up to that point, it's quite fine. There's good weight, good feel to the steering. Not an awful lot of feedback. I mean, it's not a GTI, and it never will be. But it feels absolutely good to drive. Very positive, very easygoing. And again, don't want to labour the EV3 point, but a little bit nicer to drive than that kind of square-shaped Kia. It just, overall, I think this feels like a really, really solidly impressive car. I do have issues with the ride quality. I do have issues with the range of this basic model, that you're not quite getting enough range, even though it is at a very affordable price point. But even with those critiques, I do think this is a typical Skoda in that it just feels well thought out, well executed. It's got exceptionally good quality. It's got a really, really, not just good, I do mean genuinely great vehicular interior. It's really, really good in here. And so on that basis, I think you could see that those 25,000 people who've put down deposits, they may just turn out to be the tip of the iceberg for this car. This could be a hugely popular car across Europe and across Ireland. And I think probably deservedly so. Again, I think that the 60 model, when it shows up with that slightly better range, in fact, never mind slightly, definitively better range, that's going to actually be the one to go for, because it's not much more expensive than this basic one, but it does give you an extra 140, 150 or so kilometers of range, and that, I think, makes it a much more usable proposition. But yeah, overall, given how beloved Skoda has become as a brand in Ireland, it's going to be very, very hard to see this doing anything other than very well indeed when it finally shows up next April. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this complete car review of the Skoda Elroq. Don't forget to head over to CompleteCar.ie for reviews of the entire Skoda model range, and indeed every other new car, and particularly new electric cars on the market at the moment. And if you have enjoyed this video, and we do hope you have, do please like and subscribe, and hey, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your pets, and come over and check out our channel on the regular to see what we've been up to. Thanks very much for watching.